Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to the 12 Ronnies live stream for today, which is going to be on the topic of so you've had an idea, now what? So it's brilliant that everybody who is here has, engaged with the title. And I've got Bill Murray here with me to have a conversation with about the topic. But before we dive into that, I am going to show you a link which you'll be able to find either on LinkedIn in the comments or on YouTube in the comments or on Facebook in the comments during this live group. And if you click on that link, if you have a question that you'd like to ask us in person, then click on that link and then you will appear in the studio, and then we can bring you on in person to talk about your question. So we're trying that as an experiment. If you're too shy to do that, then simply ask the questions by typing them in the comments as in previous weeks. So I'm going to hide that message now, and then we're going to get going. So hello, Bill. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. So the topic today is, so you've had an idea, now what? And I guess we start at the beginning. You got the idea. So what happens in terms of validating it?
Well, the first question you have to ask yourself is my idea solving someone's problem? So starting there, is this a solution looking for a problem, or is there a real problem out there that I've maybe subconsciously identified in my mind, and so I've already started trying to solve it?
Right. Okay. And so that's a start. But how do people know if it's viable?
Well, the first thing after that, once you say yes, there's a problem. I see the problem in the world. Then really it's time to get very disciplined with what you do, because the easiest thing in the world is to go out and build something, and because that's fun. Building stuff is fun. But what isn't fun is when you build something, you put your heart and soul into it, and you hand it to somebody, and nobody ever wants it. They reject it. So the first thing to do is to sit down and identify what your assumptions are, and looking across desirability, feasibility, and viability, and making an exhaustive list of all the things that you can do to learn in those three spaces that don't cost you anything. Because that's the stage you're at. You're not at the stage to fund your idea at all. You're at the stage to learn, and there's a lot of learning, especially in today's world of technology. There's the bar is so much lower than it used to be to get into any type of industry. There's a lot of great things you can do for free, online, in person, with people, to learn what you need to learn to decide whether or not it's something you should even invest a single dollar.
So asking the question in a different way, what kind of mistakes should people avoid when they're, thinking about where to go next with their idea?
First, the build first mentality. Step away from that. Stop thinking about what you're going to build, but instead think in terms of what you're going to solve. Fall in love with a problem, not your solution. And that's the biggest problem for entrepreneurs, and myself included. I get an idea and I'm instantly tied to it very closely. It's personal to me. It's something that compels me. But we need to shift away from that and instead be compelled by problems, because then our solution becomes dynamic, and it can become something that the customer can actually access to solve their problem. And they can, in a jobs to be done concept, they can hire your solution to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm. And Simon is asking from the YouTube chat. I'll just bring on the question. How do I find problems to solve? So what are the criteria? What makes you go and look in a particular place for a problem?
Well, if you're looking for a problem to solve, all you have to do is step out your front door. There are plenty of them around. You can listen to people talking. You can eavesdrop on people in a public place. You can, for me, I go to the grocery store a lot, and I see a lot of problems at the grocery store. I see, for instance, it's a common problem I see. I go there at about 5:30, right about just about the dinner hour, and I see professional people, especially professional women, who are there. frantically looking through the frozen food aisle for some sort of dinner solution. And I kind of know what's going on there because my wife was at a certain point in her life was in the same situation. She was working full time, trying to work her way up in the organization, a professional, a professional woman, but at the same time, she wanted to also take care of her family in the way that she wanted to. So she was kind of torn here. Well, I'm working full time, but I also want to put a hot meal on the table because that's important to me, and bringing my family together is important to me. So, so as I go in, I see I see people of various kinds, frantically looking for those meals. In my mind, I see a problem there that could be solved in a way that doesn't involve someone having to frantically go to the grocery store at 5:30 on their way home from a hard day at work. So those are things you can see. You can go to public places. You can go to businesses, and you can see people having problems. It's just having an open mind and just asking yourself why. Why is this happening? What's going on here and why?
Okay, thank you, Bill. And thank you, Simon, for asking the question. If anybody else wants to ask a question, then simply put it in the chat or click on the live stream link at the streamyard.com link and come and have a chat with us in person. Okay, so how would you know how long to spend validating your idea, Bill? I mean,
well, it's all about signals. And so the validation process starts from low fidelity. Simple tests showing people a picture of something that you might want to build and seeing if they're, seeing what their interest is in it, getting people to commit to, a beta test or something like that. But you work your way up in fidelity until you get to the point where you've got people that are trying to give you money in exchange for the thing that you've built at the fidelity you've built it at. At that point, then it comes time to kind of flesh out that business model and go from being in startup mode, which is learning, to going to business mode, which is executing on that business model that you discovered in startup mode.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on a bit. As part of the validation process for someone that's had an idea, which could be, starting a business, or it could be a creative person, who's writing a book, or who's, making a film, or, a singer-songwriter or whatever. So it's not just, startup commercial businesses in the traditional sense. One of the things that's involved with validation is doing market research and trying to find out who your customers are. So we'll spend a little time exploring that section. So how would you identify your target audience, Bill?
Yeah, so this is where it gets hard. There's the adoption curve. I like to use the adoption curve that starts on the left. It's sort of a bell curve. On the left, it starts out with what's called the innovators. Those are the people that have already solved the problem for themselves. They found a box of mixed parts, and they put them together into something that actually solved the problem. So going out into the world and understanding that problem and who it impacts, finding people that have already solved your problem is a great place to start. Then work your way into the early adopters. And these are the easiest people to find because they have the most intense version of the problem. They want to solve it the most. So this is where you try to figure out where that beachhead customer is, and they could, where do they go? Who do they associate with? What are their ages? What is their gender? Do they work at a certain place? Do they live in a certain area? So it's understanding in terms of that problem. Well, who are the people that are having it, and where are they? Can I find them online? Can I find them in person? And once you're able to do that, you can start to then test some of your riskiest assumptions on them around that desirability, viability, and then feasibility as well.
Mm-hmm. Simon's just reminding us that 42% of startups fail because there's no market need for the product.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us about some effective ways in which people could research their market.
So they're getting out, into the world is the first way. Is let's go out, let's watch people who are solving, have tried to solve the problem, because in those moments is when you're going to learn the most. Now and then there are online resources for market research. There are there are companies that provide you with surveys and other types of access. Those can get a bit expensive though. So those are things you'll want to do at a little bit higher fidelity when you've really validated that there is a problem and that you know that there's people there. You may be just trying to answer certain questions about that group of people.
Okay. And should people think at the beginning about launching into a niche, or do you think that they should think about a more a kind of broader audience?
Always niche first. If you try to build a problem or build a solution for everyone, then everyone won't like it. But if you start with the smallest group of people, that group of early adopters, the people that can teach you the most about solving that problem and the impacts of the problem and of solving it, that's where you want to start. And that can be a fairly small group, but your ability to find them shows your ability as an entrepreneur to build your business. Because if you can't find these customers, then you're not going to have a business. Every business depends on finding customers to trade goods and services with for money or some sort of equivalent that allows the business to continue on. And that's that business model. No customers, no business model.
Yeah, sure. Well, Simon's come back with another question. And I want to roll this into a more general question as well. Simon's question is, are online surveys a good way of working out whether a business idea is any good? And I mean, as a more general thing, how would you suggest is a good way of collecting data in order to find out what your target customers are interested in?
Yeah, I get in trouble with some people when I talk about surveys, but for me, and I've moderated a bit. So for me, a survey can be a step zero. And by that, I mean, it can be something that you send out to a group of people just to learn if even there is a problem out there. The problem with surveys is that people answer them aspirationally, and they'll answer them perhaps knowing what you're looking for, wanting to please you. So the old saying is that you can't interview a survey. Now you can if you know who answered the survey, and then you can send out a survey, and then you can pick from the survey respondents who you want to talk to, because that survey can help you really narrow down people to that early adopter. So it just depends on how you do it. If you just want to send a survey out to 1,000 random people, it's probably not worth the time and the money to do it. But if you want to send it out to a specific group of people to help narrow down a group of customers, that's fantastic. And then you can interview those people and get very close to them. But surveys all by themselves, no. But another way to look at a survey would be to have a landing page and send people to that page almost like a survey. Give them the opportunity to evaluate your product, and then actually have a call to action like click here to buy. You may not have a product yet, but when they click here, it says, oh, I'm sorry, it's not currently available in your area. Please enter your email address to get on our preferred customer list or our beta list or whatever. So those are great ways to do something that's like a survey. Hey, do you like our product? And yet actually get something from it that matters and that moves you forward. Because once you have people that say, yes, I'm going to buy. Now they're not all going to buy, because people don't always do what they say, but you can even go one step further and ask for a deposit. To guarantee your place in line, just give us $10.
Right.
Those sort of things. So those are like surveys, but they have clear calls to action that move you forward. Whereas a survey all by itself might not, unless you use it very strategically to identify a group of people to go and then do in-person things with.
Okay, so and how can you learn as well from your competitors, assuming you've got some?
Yeah, it's great. Competitors is a great way to learn, because you can go out and talk to people that already own that product. In fact, I worked with a team one time that took the competitor's product, that they took the labels off of it, put their own label on it, and then gave it to some of the early adopters and asked them to kind of diary about it each day, to journal actually is the word they use, journal about it. And they gave them the product, and then for about a month, they had them enter in each day how they interacted with the product, how it impacted them, how it solved the problem, that kind of thing. And they learned a great deal from that product, and they learned where they could actually potentially get a foothold in an existing market. So it was a great way for them to work.
Okay, and sort of building on that, how would you create a buyer persona for an ideal customer?
So that comes out of those interviews. So at the end of a group of interviews, I've got a fairly clear picture, of who the customer is, where they work, where they live, why the problem is important to them, when, where, and how the problem happens, and then some examples of how they've tried to solve before. And what I can then do is I can turn that into sort of that persona, that picture, and then I can start using that to identify potential channels where I can find those people, and I can even use it to identify new additional personas that might also be impacted favorably by my product.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you. Well, the next stage, phase 3, if you like, we've now validated our idea, and we found some customers, we think. But now we have to build a prototype or an MVP. So I guess the first question is, what's the difference between a prototype and an MVP, Bill?
Prototype is a little bit further down the road. MVP is if you use the classic definition, this is the old Eric Ries definition, it's the simplest thing that you can build to test your riskiest assumption. And a lot of times that riskiest assumption, at least with the teams I've worked with over the years, is customer will accept help. This is kind of the old thing, as a lot of us men back in the old days, we would never ask, before we had apps to get us around from place to place. We get lost, but we would never ask for directions because we were too proud to ask for it. We would rather drive around aimlessly and be lost and potentially run out of gas in the desert than actually go ask someone for simple directions to get to get somewhere. That's sort of the classic example. But customer will accept help. Customer is able to accept help. So those are sort of your first your MVPs, and an MVP is really kind of a stripped down version of your product that has all the aspects for a good user experience. They're just slimmed down a bit, and so it's something that you can present to the customer that's good enough for them to say, "Ooh, that's solving my problem. That looks like that would solve my problem." But at the same time, it isn't so much that you make an investment in it that's hard to walk away from. So then the prototypes then are things that kind of start with a very low fidelity and work their way up. Prototypes always go upward in fidelity, and they start with something that usually doesn't exist. Your first prototype should be a photograph, a picture, a drawing, a web page, as we mentioned before. Here's a picture of it. Buy now. If we can get people to buy now based on the picture, that would justify a prototype that maybe is real, that we can actually sell to a few people and be able to iterate on. So it works that way up, and until we've got something where we have a fully fleshed out user experience, and it's something that theoretically then could pass on from the early adopter, who don't care if it's got little bumps and bruises to it and nicks and it's not painted the right color, to that early majority, which is crossing the chasm. The early majority, the difference between them and the early adopters, the early majority isn't going to touch your product until they see the Google reviews. Whereas the early adopters, they'll rip it out of your hand because their hair is on fire.
Okay. Simon was so interested in this particular part of the conversation that he's requested to join us on stage. So
wonderful.
From YouTube. So I sent him a message to say come on board, and so he clicked on the link in YouTube, and here he is. So we've proved that it works. Which is very
Hi, gents. No, I'm loving this conversation, and Bill, what I really had to talk to you about this prototype thing, or were you talking about prototypes? Because I find when I'm teaching entrepreneurship, I find it very difficult to explain to people what a prototype is, first of all. So I love that definition. I'd love you to say it again, the definition of a prototype, because I think that's so important.
Well, if I remember, I don't always remember what I say, but the prototypes always go from very low fidelity to high fidelity. It's a continuum. You start with something that doesn't exist, like a photograph or a description, or even an emotion, and then you work your way up. Each time that you get customer, the positive customer feedback, every time they're buying, you're able to move up a level until it's something actually tangible, where you can then start to do that iterative work where you hand it to someone and they say, oh, where's the red button? Or, oh, this doesn't work after sunset, or that kind of thing. And then you're starting to iterate on narrower and narrower things, and you're getting less and less wrong with each prototype until you get something that's so not wrong that it's almost right.
Well, that's wonderful, because most of the entrepreneurs that I work with, that I teach, skip the prototype stage and they go straight on to, they think lean, but they go straight on to an MVP. I think it's human nature. We want to build things. Yeah. We want to create things. We have an idea. We see that it solves a problem. We often, and I've been guilty of this so much in doing startups, we just go ahead and do. We go, well, this is going to change things. There's going to be so many people that want this, and we go ahead and build. And it's only when we're then struggling to find a market for it that we go back and say, well, what if customers really want? How am I going to get to them? And we've got this product that we've built that we're then trying to backtrack into an MVP. But I love the way the prototype, you're talking about a prototype, can just be an image. It can just be a drawing. It can be something as simple as that. And when I think about it, we buy an awful lot of products online, and all we're seeing is an image of something online. We're not getting to feel it, touch it, turn it upside down. We're just getting to see there's something there. There's maybe a bit of validation from people that have bought it, saying this is a great product. And we go ahead and click, and we spend our $24.99 on whatever it costs. So I think this prototype thing is, or approaching starting a business with a prototype, is so undervalued. So I had to jump on and just highlight how important that is.
Yeah, and it's fun. What's not fun is building a car when you're not sure if the customer needs transportation yet.
Yeah.
Because it turns out, they wanted transportation, but I don't need a car. I just need a skateboard. And so we spent all this money on a car. The customer won't buy it because it's going to be too expensive. Their budget was only for a skateboard. So it's actually fun working this way up and actually finding this surprise place where the prototype is good enough. I can't believe this is good enough for my customer. Yeah. Well, that's why we work this way instead of starting here. You can never go back. You can't take the wheels off a car.
And exactly, we're always trying to, while we're trying to create things, which is the supply side, what we really want to do is understand the demand side. Yeah. So, and I think that's where prototypes come in very well. It's if we think there's a demand, show our idea in terms of a prototype to the audience we think there's a demand to, and we'll soon get an indication. And if there's strong demand, they'll bite our arm off for it. And if it's, that sounds really good, you probably need to do a bit more customer discovery work. So the prototype's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, I had a team that once went to they crashed a meeting of people they thought would be their target customer, and they got 10 minutes over the lunch hour to describe their product. It was just a description. They just had a piece of paper with 3 or 4 sentences on it. And they said, hey, you'll let us know if you're interested. And as they were walking out to the bathroom, whatever, and people in the meeting were following them into the bathroom, asking them how they could pay.
Yeah.
That's a great example of it. And it didn't cost them a dime except for the gas to get an hour from the office.
But their reaction told them everything, didn't it? Whether it was desirable, whether there will be demand. So love that. Okay, gents, I'm sorry to gate crash your part of the call, but I had to jump on. I thought that was a really powerful part. I'm going to go back and join on the YouTube channel now.
Okay, will do, Simon. So you're going to take yourself out? Yeah. Okay.
Chris, I was thinking about, maybe some of your experiences around prototyping, this sort of MVP idea, that sort of thing, your opinions or your experiences with yourself or other people,
yes,
on your side.
Yeah, well, I think what we'll do is we'll spend the rest of the call. We'll have a part 2 that we'll call, so you've built a prototype, now what?
Now what?
because there are some more stages, but we're not going to get to those today. Yeah, no, I agree. I think I think maybe in the past, some of the things that I've developed as startups, you know, we have built things. They've tended to be digital products. And I guess what I've learned subsequently and what you're saying is that you don't actually need to build the website in the first place as the first thing to do to start to get some interest in something.
Or just a page, you know.
Yeah, or a landing page. But to be, you know, on our, you know, to our defense, I mean, for example, one project, well, site that I was involved with developing was for a thing called Story Code. But we built the site in 2005. So, you know, the amount of resources, the ease of getting online. I mean, I'm sure people were still using modems and things at the time. You know, so, you know, I don't want to beat myself up too much. You know, and it kind of it worked to the extent of it became like a sort of beta thing, and it worked to the extent of getting people engaged. What it didn't do ultimately was attract money. So, you know, it didn't particularly end up being, you know, a successful business, although it was ahead of its time rather than being a bad idea. And I do think that sometimes if you get good feedback, even though you don't get the funding for something, then it can convince you to put the thing in mothballs and look after it until such time that you can then bring it out of the archive and have another go, you know, because there's nothing wrong in, you know, that if a good idea is a good idea, it's still a good idea, even if it's the wrong time, you know.
Yeah, that's sort of the classic pivot decisions. Like, you know, and sometimes we don't pivot right away. It's like, well, hey, we learned these things and we did it inexpensively. All it cost us was a website. And so, yeah, we know this is ahead of its time. We know these things. So, well, let's revisit this in 2 years, or let's revisit this when a specific technology or when a specific thing happens in society. Or when something becomes the norm, and then we'll be in a great place to launch this. So that's important too. You know, I think one of the most important things is so you have an idea. Well, guess what? It might not be a very good one. So let's make sure we do the things we have to do. Let's learn what we have to learn so that you don't. Yeah, Kickstarter is full of prototypes, so that you don't lose your ability to nail the next idea, because you spend all your money on this one, on something that was a loser from the beginning potentially. So I think, you know, that's what happens. How do we help people to not make the big mistake that prevents them from ever being an entrepreneur again?
Well, that's an argument for. I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask is, do you need to be technical to build a prototype? And the answer is no, isn't it? I mean,
not anymore.
It can simply be a piece of paper, as you say. So
yeah, and with AI.
Yeah, one amazing prototype, I guess, that I saw for somebody that was building an app. What he did was he made this. It was like, well, it wasn't origami, but he kind of built this model.
Paper prototype.
Yeah, and it was what it was. He made it look like the screen of a phone, and then he created what looked like a piece of old-fashioned 35mm film, and each frame on the film was a screen on the app. So all you did is you pulled the strip through the viewfinder of this screen on the mobile phone, and it showed you different screens that you'd see on the app if you were to navigate around. So that was kind of, it was like a manual way of showing something that was digital, you know.
There are some great videos on YouTube of kids doing paper prototypes of apps or products or that sort of thing. And, you know, and they go to people and say, well, what button would you push? Well, I'll push this one. And so then they pull, flip. Okay, now we're on this page. It's almost like a choose your own adventure book. So yeah, those are great ways, and they don't cost a thing. Just a pile of paper and a pen. It's and it's fun. It really is fun because you learn so much so quickly, and you can change it on the fly. Say, okay, I'm going to cross out this button. I'm going to draw in a new one. How about now? Oh, I like that better.
Yeah.
It's fun. We don't have to do the stressful thing, which is spend a lot of money on a high fidelity prototype. That's stressful.
Yeah. Well, just a couple of questions about MVPs and prototypes to finish.
Yeah.
We're getting towards the end. How would we get feedback on our prototype or MVP, and what would we do with the feedback?
So this is where you can present it online, you can present it in person, whatever the interface you want. I mean, you have to get that prototype to the person and then watch them in that moment as they use it. So in some cases, in a retail store, they'll set the prototype for whatever it is. They'll just set it out on the floor and they'll watch it. I mean, I was talking to somebody at a market research conference, and they were talking about, well, you can't do this low fidelity prototyping with consumer packaged goods because you got to package it and you got to build it, you make it, and you got to put it on the store shelf. And I said, no, you don't. I said, if I wanted to test new tangerine flavored Coca-Cola, all I have to do is make a sheet of stickers that say Tangerine Coke on it, and then I go into the grocery store and I put those on the regular Coke on the package. And then I watch people go up and down the aisles, and I see somebody stop and look at it and have them pull it off the shelf. And then I go and intercept them and say, hey, I noticed you grabbed the Tangerine Coke. Just for the record, this is actually regular Coke, but I was wondering what you thought of in that moment when you grabbed it. And then you get to have a quick interview with them. You give them a gift certificate for free Coke because you kind of fooled them, but for good reason. They're happy, you're happy, and you tested Tangerine Coke without spending. You spent a couple of dollars on some nice looking printed stickers.
Okay. Well, thank you.
It's that kind of thing. You can get it right in front of them. Even on the website, you get feedback. Hey, how can we do this better? I mean, you could do some surveys, but again, you just want to go back and interview the people that answer the survey. Why did you dislike it, or what did you not like about the color?
Well, let's say you've had some great feedback about your MVP or your prototype. Is that then the time to get really excited and try and get a patent for your products or trademark for what you've done, or is it way too early still?
Probably still a little early. Some people like to do that. And there might be a case for at least getting like a provisional patent or something like that. A placeholder that maybe protects something if you've really got some secret sauce that you need to protect. But until you have a business model, you don't really have a business. And patents all by themselves aren't particularly valuable, especially if you don't have a validated market for it. Nobody's going to come and buy your patent off of you. They'll just steal it. I mean, that's how it works. So you need to fill out the business model canvas and actually have a clear way of getting from customer to solution to payment to profitability before you really think about spending a lot of money on lawyers and patent.
Yeah, well, I guess we can have a useful half-an-hour session on that at some point. Because
it's an important part of the process. It's just
totally. Yeah.
It's just it can be an excuse to not learn more for some people. Oh, now I got to go spend 6 months getting a patent. Actually, why don't we just spend 6 months building a business and see if it's worth patenting?
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, we're going to take a pause there and carry on next time. So we're, it's next time it'll be so you've built your MVP now, what, and then we'll carry on with the next phases in the process of launching your product. So thank you very much, Bill, and thank you very much for everybody in the audience. I just remind everybody that if you've enjoyed this session or previous sessions, then please like us at LinkedIn and at Facebook and at YouTube, and click the notification button so that you know when we're on, so you get a reminder. And also, if you've liked what you've heard or you think it's valuable, then please tell your colleagues or share it around your networks. And finally, somebody in the LinkedIn audience said that, which is very kind. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
At least one satisfied customer. So that's really good news. Okay. So thank you very much, Bill, as I say. And we'll see you all again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Bye-bye then. Bye.